In this lesson, students will be able to identify and model fractions on a number line by making the appropriate number of jumps. By now, students should have a basic understanding of what a fraction is. They have had practice identifying and labeling a variety of fraction models. In the previous lesson, your child learned how to use unit fractions to partition or divide a number line into equal lengths or intervals and label each of those intervals. They will need to be able to apply that knowledge of partitioning a number line in order to be successful in today's lesson. Let's begin by finding where the fraction 3/4 would be located on a number line. This is a difficult concept for students because they're used to using number lines with only whole numbers that go up consecutively. For example, if the number line started at 0, your student would easily be able to correctly place a 3 and 4 on the number line by simply counting. However, now we're asking them to understand that a 3 written over a 4 somehow fits between 0 and 1. To help their understanding, we're going to connect the number line to fraction strips, which they are already familiar with. If I create 3/4 with my fraction strips and compare it to the whole, I can see that it's less than 1. So I know that 3/4 must fit on the number line between 0 and 1. Let's begin with a blank number line. I will start with the fraction strip that represents the whole and place it on the line beginning at 0. Then I will place a tick mark at the end of the whole piece and label it 1 because the distance from 0 to that point represents one whole. Now we need to find where 3/4 is. Looking at the fraction, I first need to find the interval, or how to partition the number line between 0 and 1. The interval is shown in the denominator. In this case, the denominator is 4, so I know I need to divide my number line into fourths. 4/4 is equal to one whole, so I'm going to replace the whole piece with fourths. Each of the fraction pieces shows an interval of 1/4 on the number line. I'm going to place a tick mark at the end of each piece to show the interval. Starting at 0, if I make a jump on the number line to the first tick mark, I can see that I have moved a length of 1/4, so I will label the first tick mark 1/4. If I make another jump on the number line, I have now moved over 2 times from the 0. If I look at my fraction strips, I can see that I have moved a distance of 2/4, so I can label this mark 2/4. If I jump a third time, I can see that I have moved 1/4 3 times, so this mark would represent 3/4, and I will label this on the number line. We have now found 3/4. I want to continue labeling my number line though. I've already labeled 1, but what fraction is it equal to? Beginning at the 0, I would jump 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So I can see that 1 is equal to 4/4. Let's look at a different problem. This time, let's find 3/2 on a number line. Again, I'm going to use fraction strips to help connect my students' previous knowledge of fractions on the number line. So let's compare 3/2 to the whole. I can see that 3/2 is larger than one whole, but I think it's less than 2 wholes. To compare, I'll lay out one more whole. Now I see that 3/2 is more than one whole but less than 2. So how would I represent this on my number line? Just as before, I want to label the whole pieces on my number line first. I will place them end to end, beginning at 0. At the end of the first whole, I will draw a tick mark to represent where one whole is located and label it. I will then draw another tick mark at the end of the second whole and label it 2, because it represents the length of 2 holes. Now I need to decide how to partition the number line by finding the interval. Remember, this is shown in the denominator. Since there is a 2 in the denominator, I know I need to partition it into halves. There are 2 halves in each whole, so I will replace each whole with 2 halves. Each fraction piece represents an interval of 1/2. Starting at 0, if I jump over 1/2, one time I would label that 1/2. If I make another jump, I land on the 1, but I also notice that I've moved over a length of 2 halves. So 2 halves is also equal to 1. Remember that we're looking for 3 halves, so I will make one more jump for a total of 3 jumps of 1/2, which is 3 halves. You will want to have your child practice partitioning different number lines into halves, thirds, fourths, sixths, and eighths, and find a variety of fractions on those number lines. Our goal today was to be able to identify and model fractions on a number line. We did this by using fraction strips to not only help partition the number lines into appropriate intervals, but also to help students make the connection between a familiar model of fractions and the number line. We then counted the number of jumps to label the tick marks on the number line and find where a fraction would be located.